And that's the end of the first half. As the teams head to the locker room, the Spartans lead the Bulldogs by a score.
You guys stink.
Geez, Coach, we're only down a couple of points.
No, I mean you guys really smell. You need to hit the showers. And here, I got every one of you new bars of soap from the Sterling Soap Company. Each bar is artisan crafted using natural ingredients and essential oils. They also have shave soaps, colognes, beard balm, and a whole lot more. Now get in there.
But Coach, we have another half to play.
I don't care. I can't stand to be around you.
A few minutes later.
All right, bring it in tight. You guys are still playing terrible, but you're smelling great out there. Now listen, you're going to need to stock up for the rest of the season. We got a lot of tough games left. So go to sterlingsoap.com after the game. That's STIRLING soap.com. You got that?
Yes, Coach.
Great. Sterlingsoap.com on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Sterlingsoap.com.
Welcome back to Award-winning Basketball History 101, part of the Sports History Network. I am your host, Rick Loayza, and this is the podcast where we bring to life some of the forgotten stories from basketball history. We are bringing old school basketball to a new school audience. And today we bring you an interview with Bo Belanger. He is a writer, producer, and the creative force behind a new podcast series about the life of Connie Hawkins and Jack Molinas. The podcast is called Connie and Jack, a Rigged Game. Connie Hawkins is a Hall of Fame player who was initially banned by the NBA for accusations of shaving points while at the University of Iowa. The problem was that he never actually played a single game while at Iowa. And Jack Molinas was a former NBA player who had turned to gambling and was a ringleader of a massive point-shaving scandal in college basketball. The two men crossed paths only briefly, but the impact to Hawkins was far-reaching. So, without further ado, here is our interview with Bo Belanger.
This is Basketball History 101 with Rick Loayza.
All right, welcome back to Basketball History 101 with Rick Loayza. And today, as I mentioned in the intro, I have Bo Belanger with me, and he has put together his own podcast called Connie and Jack, a Rigged Game, and really looking forward to hearing that. So this is our interview with Bo. And so, Bo, welcome to the show. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rick. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. We got in touch with each other, through this podcast, and you've got your own that you wanted to share and talk about. And I'm more than happy to have you on. Connie Hawkins, Jack Molinas, and the college point shaving scandal from the 50s and I think into the 60s. I think there was a different one in the 60s.
Exactly.
But obviously there was a lot of people involved, but Connie Hawkins is probably one of the more famous, if not the most famous player in that got caught up into it. I'll say it like that, got caught up in it.
Yeah, absolutely. He was there was a number of guys who were sort of they were never charged with a crime. The other big name is Roger Brown, but there were others, Doug Moe, and a handful of guys who were never charged with a crime. You know, in Connie's case, not charged with a crime, and it really derailed his career. Even though he knew Molinas from playing in the schoolyards, and he had taken a loan which he paid back. But they sort of yanked him off the campus at Iowa. He was just a freshman, and brought him to New York. And he had sort of a hellish two weeks during this investigation when they were trying to get Molinas. This was a 61 scandal, and he told the truth for about a week, and then he realized that they wanted to hear a certain thing, so he started telling them what they wanted to hear. You know, basically just started spinning a web of lies with the cops because they were after Molinas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, was never read his rights. Was wearing the same pair of clothes for 2 weeks. They wouldn't let him call his mother. You know, it was very much bully tactics on this investigation. But he flew back to Iowa, and they said you need to withdraw. And his life was basically ruined from accepting a loan from Jack Molinas.
So what drew you to this story in particular? Because there are, hundreds of possible stories you could do through basketball history. But why was this one did stick out for you?
Yeah, so I came to this story. I was actually helping some friends develop a TV show about the ABA, and I was doing a lot of research for it. So I read like Terry Pluto's book Loose Balls, which is a classic, and a number of other books. Dr. J had an autobiography, which I loved, and my uncle recommended this book Foul, which is about Connie Hawkins, and it was out of print. And I read the book, and was able to get my hands on a copy of it, read it. And the story just stayed with me. You never sold the show, but I sort of the story stayed with me. I reached out was trying to figure out the rights to the book. Like, why hasn't this been made? It's just a fantastic story. Why hasn't it been made into a TV show or a movie or anything? And basically, I ended up talking to Connie's grandson, Sean Hawkins, who's been a partner with me on this project. And Sean just explained that they weren't sophisticated enough to have, like, when Connie passed, to have any life rights set up. So everyone would try to get the rights to this book, would fail. It was sort of a combination of things. It was Connie's story really sticking with me. And then after talking to Sean and hearing how he wanted his grandfather's story out there, and rightfully, it's a fantastic story. It's really a story about perseverance, and it's incredibly impressive what Connie went through. And so it's sort of those two factors where I was like, all right, I'm gonna spend a lot of time trying to make this happen.
Well, two things. I kind of have two questions in mind here. So first, I want to ask you how you got in touch with Sean Hawkins and to do this story. Like, how did you find him, or how did he find you to participate?
I found him when I believe it was just on Instagram. I was just trying to find any members of Connie's family that I could get, and Sean was grandson of, he's the son of Shauna, Connie's oldest daughter. He was just the one I reached out to, and it was just such a blessing because he's just this he is just so passionate about it, of getting his grandfather's story out there. So it was really just lucky.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's amazing. I mean, I guess social media comes in hand in these kinds of things sometimes. That's
Absolutely.
And you put in quite a bit of time putting all this together, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I put in the short answer is probably a year and a half of research. The reason that was the case is because, like I said, the rights to this book, Foul, it's by Dave Wolf. It's a fabulous book. Would recommend anyone who can get their hands on it. It's out of print, sort of criminally, I think. It's such a good book. But we couldn't get the rights to that book, and I wanted to, it's sort of the definitive story of Connie's life, and I wanted to source Connie's story sort of outside of that book. So what I did was I went into newspaper, this is during the depths of COVID, and went into just magazine and newspaper archives and just sort of dug around for all the newspaper articles, all the magazine articles I could get, read a number of other books as well. Just try to figure out another way at the story. I didn't want to just retell Dave's story, a straight biography of Connie, and that's where Jack comes in. I initially had actually wanted to try to draw out the relationship between Connie and his mom, but I wasn't able to find much about her. But this Jack Molinas character was really hopping off the page as I was doing my research. He's just as you covered in one of your previous episodes, he was a fantastic player, All-American at Columbia, was a first-round draft pick in the NBA, and then booted from the league for betting on his own games. This was about 10 years before Connie. This is like the mid-50s, and always had a sort of this, as you mentioned in your episode, just really an addiction to gambling that he couldn't kick. And so he was an ex-NBA player, he sort of started he ran the mob and ran this college fixing scandal. The light bulb moment was when I realized if I told these guys' story, it's sort of like a dual biography. You have Connie's story, this one guy who just really wants one shot in life. And then you have Jack, who seems to be getting a lot of chances and he keeps blowing it. And that was sort of once I was like, okay, if I could just tell this as a dual biography, this is a really powerful story. It's sort of larger themes about America sort of start to emerge. And that was a good moment during the research process.
Yeah. And yeah, you're right. Molinas himself is just such a fascinating character. He's, with a guy with as much talent And having played, I mean, you would think he might be the last person to begin, gambling on games, but everybody's different. You could do a whole thing just on him, but I love the idea of doing, like you said, the dual biography of how their paths cross and how each of their stories progressed before and after the actual incident with Connie Hawkins.
Yeah, it's really only a pretty brief moment in time when their lives crossed. It's obviously just a shame they did for Connie, because they really derailed his life for about a decade. But it's a brief moment in time when Jack was trying to influence. He was probably in his second or third year running this fixing operation. So this is the end of the 50s, early 60s, and as you mentioned, great basketball player. So all the guys in New York knew him because he'd just go around to all the big pickup games. And when Connie met him, he said, "Yeah, I was impressed with Jack because he was one of the few guys I met whose hands were almost as big as mine." Molinas was a hell of a basketball player, and so he'd go around to these playgrounds and try to recruit these kids. He was looking for kids who had financial insecurities because obviously they'd be more willing to throw a game for him. So he met a bunch of these players. He happened to cross paths with Connie, and he'd slip these guys $10 here and there, try to get in their good graces, and then it wasn't. I think it was 6 months later. Connie was home for Christmas. But he's a freshman, of course, so he's not playing at that point on the varsity. This is back, as you know, before freshmen could play on the varsity team in college. And he was home for Christmas, and his coach had given him a couple $100 for his dorm fees for the spring, but Connie spent that money on Christmas gifts for his family. So he was terrified of having to go back to school and face his coach with the money, the tuition or whatever it was, money for books gone. And Jack always had told him, if you ever need anything, give me a shout. And Connie said, it's like, he was the one guy who I knew who had that sort of money. So I went to him, I borrowed the $200, I went back to school. His brother Fred repaid Jack. And then, this is like April of his freshman year, a detective shows up on campus. And as I mentioned, from there, it just sort of goes really downhill for Connie.
Yeah. And it's one of the toughest stories to listen to, because he was such a fantastically gifted player, and we did not get to see him in the NBA or even in the ABA for quite a while because this was hanging around his neck. And it's just one of those kind of those big what ifs. What if he was able to go into the NBA as a normal rookie, same age as all the other rookies? Just where would his career numbers stand in comparison? And yeah, it's one of those stories that just such a shame that it all about how it would happen, how it went down. But you're gonna go deep and bring out details and stories related to what's happening here that are, I imagine, going to be quite eye opening.
Yeah, it's a funny story, Rick, because it's really on the one hand, he ends up making the Phoenix franchise eventually, and he's a great star, all-star in the NBA and someone the league is proud of. But it's a very conflicting story for the NBA because they're really a villain in the story. They, as you sort of, when you listen to the podcast, you'll sort of hear like they were very negligent in looking into Connie's case. In fact, they didn't even sort of look into whether he was never charged with a crime. Molinas and Hacken had been saying for years that he was innocent, and so he's really sort of presumed guilty by the league. And it like you said, it is an absolute shame because he was incredibly talented. People often said he was sort of the link between Baylor and Dr. J as far as the guys who really took, Baylor took the game to the air for the first time. He was really the first time to sort of play in the air. And then people, of course, the next guy is Dr. J that people know, but really the connection there was Connie between those two guys. And he was playing around New York and just the height of New York hoops. When Connie he was a playground a god in the late 50s, early 60s, and just so much. There's like young Lou Alcindor was taking inspiration from him. of course, Dr. J was around as a young. They called Dr. J Little Hawk at Rucker because their game had such similarities to each other. But it's a huge what if career, and he ends up coming into the. I don't want to spoil too much, but I'm sure some people know the story. He gets into the league belatedly, and he's not the. There's a lot of lost years. Someone has a quote about it's like finding when you see him play, it's like finding like a lost Picasso in the attic, because it's like there are so many masterpieces on the court that he put together that we'll just never know about.
Yeah, right. Because he essentially he should have been in the league the whole time, and then just wasn't, because of what happened with the loan and all that. Now, you also in bringing in his family, which I think is really really neat. His grandson, Sean. You said he participated. So, what was he and his passion for his grandfather's story? How was he able to participate, or what did that look like? What's his involvement with the podcast?
Well, it was Sean was just so patient, because I did this research, as I mentioned, this was like early COVID, so this is 2020. It's been so this is I think 5 or 6 years of this project, and he as I mentioned inspired me to really dive in and source it outside Dave's book, and so he was a huge source of inspiration. And then we never really knew what form it would take. There was initially trying to do film, TV, that didn't really take, and then it was, well, maybe this could be a podcast. And so Sean was just sort of along for the ride, encouraging me as I sort of did all this research. There was never really knew what his involvement in it would be, and it wasn't until the last year and a half or so where I wanted him involved in some way, and I had the idea that if it'd be cool if he read his Connie's quotes in the story, and that was sort of the light bulb there. And it just felt like a nice way for Sean to be a part of the project. He'd been, as I mentioned, just a huge inspiration for it all, and a great, just like patient partner, encouraging. We had some really close calls and a handshake deal that fell through, just some like heartbreaking deals before we got to this point. And he was just so encouraging all the way. So I was so happy that he wanted to, voice his father's quotes in it, and that it ended up happening was really cool.
Yeah, no, that's really neat. That kind of reminds me of what is it, the Val Kilmer's documentary he made about himself, and it was his son who was that kind of the narrator of it, but his voice was so similar. I couldn't even tell that it wasn't Val Kilmer until I found out afterwards. But I love that, of having the grandson reading the quotes by Connie Hawkins, and to give it that sort of that weight, or that kind of kind of an authenticity, so to speak, to what Connie would have said back then.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he's Sean's in the Pittsburgh area, which is where Connie was for a lot of, sort of where he raised his family. So it ties back to Pittsburgh and Connie's family. And it was really special that Sean's been a part of this.
Oh, that's so neat to hear. So again, I don't want to give away too much of it either, because you're going to do a fantastic, or you have done a fantastic job with these episodes. And so, at what point, when can we expect to hear the first episode of the Connie and the story Connie and Jack, a rigged game?
Yeah, so we're going to be putting these out in early March, and I can get you an exact. We're still sort of figuring out some marketing stuff, Rick, so I don't unfortunately have an exact date for you, but it'll be the month of March.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to run it. This felt like a good time. We have basketball sort of coming into full swing here between the tournament and NBA starting to heat up. So it felt like a good time to do it. They'll run for a month. They'll be going to drop 2 episodes the first day, and then after that, basically 2 episodes a week. So it'll run, all 9 episodes will run over a course of 4 weeks. That'll likely start in early March.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you're right, the timing couldn't be better. You have college basketball running its championship, pro basketball getting ready, or the NBA getting ready to head into their playoffs and round out their season. Yeah, I mean basketball is on the mind for most sports fans right now. So, yeah, I agree. It is great timing. So again, the podcast is called Connie and Jack, a rigged game. And so we're looking at, I think you said 9 episodes in total, 2 in the first day and then 2 a week after that. So I can't wait to hear it and to go deeper into this story. It sounds fantastic, and it is such a fascinating time of basketball where the NBA is emerging on stronger financial ground, and then this is happening with Jack Molinas, is happening with Connie Hawkins all at the same time. It's just yeah. As a basketball fan, I'm just so excited to get into this.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Rick. It's a fantastic. Both guys have, as you mentioned, interesting lives. Jack is a very colorful character, and Connie has this. Not only was he a sort of relatively unknown great basketball player, he just has this amazing life story. So I think certainly folks of your podcast, I think will like it. The people who really like basketball history, and I'm hoping. It strikes a chord with other folks too, just like it's just a sort of a classic underdog story. So I thank you again for having me on. I as I mentioned before we jumped on, I love your podcast and all the deep dives you do. So it's a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, well, thank you again, Bo, and we appreciate your time, and we definitely are looking forward to hearing your episodes again. Connie and Jack, a rigged game. So thank you again, and I appreciate your time, Bo. We want to thank Bo Belanger, and we are so excited to hear the podcast for ourselves because this is such a fascinating story. Again, the podcast is called Connie and Jack, a Rigged Game. Check it out. Well, that's it for today. Join us next time when we share another story from basketball history. That's next time on Basketball History 101, part of the Sports History Network, the headquarters of sports yesteryear. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com to find out more about this and other sports history podcasts. If you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts. And check out our page on Facebook. It's called Basketball History 101 Podcast. There you will find short historical posts, and I'll announce there when new episodes come out. I want to thank my producer and editor, Jacob Loayza. Join us each week as we continue to mine the history of basketball for more great stories from the past. Take care and see you soon.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.